Good evening, everybody. I call to order the Bethany City Council meeting for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019. Would you please rise for the prayer and for the flag salute? Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the opportunity to be in this position. I ask that you would guide us as the council to make wise decisions, to have courage, and to do what we need to do to move our city forward. We thank you, Father God, for all that you have done throughout history for our city and all that you are doing. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Vice Mayor Knapp.
Tonight, we are blessed to have with us Gail Johnson and some 3rd and 4th graders from Calvary Nazarene Church who are part of the Caravan Scouting Program. They will be completing part of the requirements for the citizenship merit badge, and please go ahead and lead the pledge for us. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You guys did great. Item 1 tonight is the consent docket A through D. Do I have a motion for approval or any questions?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Second. Please cast your votes. Now, before I call item 2, I would like to move our executive sessions number 16, 17, and 18 to this place in the agenda now. And those executive sessions, 16 is for the purposes of discussing the employment, hiring, and terms of employment of interim city manager Ken Smart, to include the proposed employment agreement between the City of Bethany and Ken Smart, and as further set forth in Resolution Number 1538. All is provided for in Title 25, Section 307B1 of the Oklahoma statutes. This action is recommended by the interim city attorney so that the council can discuss Mr. Smart's employment pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. Item 17 is discussion and update from attorneys concerning pending legal action and claims against the responsible parties concerning contamination of public water supply of the City of Bethany caused by contaminants migrating from the Oklahoma City Airport property. This is City of Bethany versus Gulfstream and Rockwell, case number 16 CV 10050. Item 18 is proposed executive session consideration and possible action to enter into executive session for confidential communication with legal counsel regarding proposed litigation against opioid manufacturers, distributors, and potential other third parties regarding the alleged intentional, reckless, and/or negligent production, promotion, sale, and marketing of opioids, including the unlawful diversion of prescription opioids, opioid abuse, addiction, morbidity, and mortality, with the advice of legal counsel that public disclosure would seriously impair the ability of the City Council to process the pending litigation in the public interest and as authorized. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. We shall return. No action was taken on item 17. Moving to item 19 on tonight's agenda. Proposed action following executive session, possible action as appropriate Councilmember Palmer?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion if that's possible.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the interim city attorney to contact outside counsel regarding the proposed opioid litigation and to place a resolution on for consideration at the next council meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Moving back to item 2 on the agenda, is proposed action following executive session. Councilmember Palmer?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 1538 as provided.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 3 is consideration and possible adoption of resolution number 1539, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Bethany approving site plan for development at 3411 North Rockwell with certain conditions to be met before issuance of an occupancy permit for the property. Do I have a staff report?
Good evening, everybody. This is a request for a site plan approval. The applicant has requested that the site plan go through the planning and zoning and council route that is allowed by ordinance due to a deficiency in the site plan that staff cannot approve. As Hank spoke to in the approval of the 7-Eleven site plan, staff is bound by our code and our ordinances and what we can approve and what we can't approve. So our ordinances give a second way for site plans to be approved, going to planning and zoning and then to council for approval. And you can approve things that staff just cannot approve. This property is not currently served by a sanitary sewer main, which is what's causing the issues and the reason that we're here today. Section 53.003 of the Bethany ordinances states where a public sanitary sewer line is not available, the building shall be connected to a private disposal system complying with all state and local regulations. In our initial site plan review, City Engineer Steve Caton stated that it was not apparent if the existing system will meet the needs of the proposed use. This property is a planned unit development that came through planning and zoning and then council for approval. It is going to be a commercial property. However, the applicant does not know currently what commercial businesses are going to go into the building. So we don't know if the existing system will meet the needs of what's going to go there because we don't know what's going to go there, causing the dilemma. The applicant can't demonstrate at this time if the existing septic system will meet the needs of the future occupants. So P&Z recommends, based on the recommendation of the interim city attorney and staff, that the site plan be approved contingent upon the applicant receiving a qualified opinion as to the adequacy of the existing sewer, or if upgrades are required, completing those improvements in accordance with local, state, and federal laws, and a CO will not be issued until the opinion is issued or the improvements are made. So similar to what we did with 7-Eleven, by approving the site plan tonight, he will be able to go ahead and pull his building permits, get started on his renovation. However, at the end, we will not issue a certificate of occupancy until he can demonstrate that the system there can meet the needs of whoever he gets to lease out or rent that space. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Beth Ann has worked with me closely on this particular case, and the applicant is here in the audience as well.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
with this application, will the business owner pay utilities to the city of Bethany for water and trash pickup, as well as will there be any fee for this sewer septic system as it would be proposed to the city?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, he would be on water for the city and trash for the city.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is there an ordinance that requires residents to create a private connection to the city main, like if they're within 300 feet or anything like that?
Not that I know of off the top of my head. That would come into play like in a subdivision process, like if someone was going to come in and subdivide a parcel of land to do, say, a residential neighborhood or build, they would have to provide water, sewer, and public improvements such as sidewalks or streets. that doesn't come into effect in this particular case.
Is that something we should address in our Title 15 rewrite?
I can definitely do that, yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Of course.
Are there any other questions?
I have a
Right.
question, Mayor.
Go
Yes,
ahead.
sir.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Sauer?
Amanda, what is the size of that lot?
I don't know the size of the lot off my top of my head. The
Is it a
building is
half acre?
1,600 square feet.
0.24.
Okay. So that prohibits him from putting in a septic system under state law with a DEQ, am I correct?
I don't know the ins and outs of septic systems.
Is the applicant able to answer some questions?
He is. I would invite him down here to answer questions.
Mike Jadun. To answer your question, if there is an existing septic, then the new law does not apply to that.
I understand that. What is the age of that property, do we know?
The house was built in 1950, and
So-
it has a septic on it.
Assuming if they haven't upgraded that system since 1950, it's going to be a relatively small tank and maybe inadequate lateral lines. So I guess my question is, you get all your work done there and you've invested a lot of time and effort and money, and you have a system that's not adequate, what's your plans at that point?
Our plan is to upgrade and comply with the state regulations. That's what we're asking. We can't do that at this point because we don't know who the tenant would be. Once we know that, we are willing to comply with that. So essentially, city would get what they want, but it would be just pushed back to a later stage of the development. So we're not, this request is not to, hey, we just don't want to do it. We just want to do it once we know who the tenant would be. So just really, it could be like, oh, you get it done now, but like staff mentioned, we don't know who's going to be occupying the building. So I think it would make sense that we just go ahead and complete the development, and then at the time, once somebody moves in, we would know what the requirement would be, and if it needs to be either upgraded or we need to put a new system in, we'll go ahead and do that.
Well, my understanding is by DEQ rule, unless you have a half acre there, you cannot put a new system in. So that kind of puts you between a rock and a hard spot.
Like I said, we spoke with DEQ. If the new law that was enacted in 1974 does not apply to the properties that have the septic on it before 1974. The new law has the half acre limit, but since, so to speak, you are grandfathered in, it doesn't apply to you. So what they do is they go, in this type of situation, they go case by case. So they know that, hey, the septic is already there. City does not have any plan to put the public sewer line. So they, based on your conditions and requirements, they can come up with a system that fits your need. So that has already been brought up. In most cases, a lot this small would not qualify. But since these are already on a septic, the DEQ would make that exception.
Okay, thank you for that information.
No problem.
Mr. Herron?
I'd just like to follow up with that. There has to be, is there not a mechanism to where there's a standard for how many bathrooms are you putting in the facility, how many office spaces, or how many parking spots? There has to be some type of standards where you could project your usage.
That is correct, but so in a residential, they can go by the number of rooms or the bedrooms or, how many bathrooms you have. And then they already know that you have a kitchen, more than likely, laundry room, all that stuff. So they could come up with something. For a business, it's almost virtually impossible. You could, for instance, you have an office, and you could go in there and say, okay, I have 4 employees and nobody visits that office pretty much, during the week you don't have any visitors. Now you could base that off of 4 employees. But there could be a business where you have 1 employee, but you have constant stream of visitors or the clients coming in, and they have to use that. So realistically, there is no way to know that for a business.
Correct
So
me if I'm wrong. He could do all this work, but you had said he will not receive an occupancy permit until he is in compliant with what the rule and regulations are.
That's correct. That's what we're asking, that the motion be. Yes, sir.
Correct.
Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, I have a follow-up.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you know where the city sewer main is in relation to this piece of property?
We don't, but it's nowhere near 3, 4, maybe 500 feet.
Okay, so are you aware that if you cannot comply with the current regulations from DEQ, that you could be required to put in your own private sewer line to the city main? Is that an expense you're willing to incur if this doesn't work out?
Well, I'm not willing to incur because it's such a small project that, there's no way to do that on this small of a project. And as far as, an existing septic, we know that it's there. It's in good condition because it was, when we bought the property, we had it pumped, had it visually inspected and all that stuff. The main issue is is the capacity, is it big enough or not? And then when you talk to DEQ, they know the situation. They know this was built in 1950. And if there is a situation where they have to put a new one in there, they assured us that there is a case-by-case basis consideration. But we're not willing to go in there and, put the sewer line on there. It's just not possible unless city is willing to help us with that.
Well, but it's possible that that could be the worst-case scenario. You could do all of this work, DEQ could not give you the permit to upgrade the septic system, and you would be required to create a private connection from your building to the city sewer. Do you understand that?
I think, if I understand correctly, you're assuming a certain, condition that could happen. I don't know. I mean, that is a possibility. And at that point, if DEQ comes up with something like that, I don't know. But that is an assumption.
So-
I don't think I can answer that.
But that's a plausible result, and I just want to make sure that you're aware that that could be a requirement. So if and when you come back to the city, I just want you to be aware of the possibility that that could occur, and that could be an expense that you would have to pay.
Yes, I appreciate you bringing that up, but, I think if they say that, no, we can't do that or whatever, then we'll have to deal with that. But at this point, I have no reason to believe that that would happen.
Mr. Mayor,
It's not doable.
Yes, ma'am.
may I have the floor, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Clarify a couple of things for me. When you talked to DEQ, did that apply, that septic tank in that situation apply to the building that was existing and there would be no ramifications if you tore that building down and built new? When you talk to them, they're saying they'll accept that septic tank. I'm assuming they're accepting that septic tank on the building that was there. Is that correct?
The building that's staying there currently, he's not gonna tear that building down.
I'm
He's
not.
adding to.
You're not tearing it
No,
down?
he's gonna add to and renovate.
But are
what's
you
there.
already in the process of remodeling, or
We're waiting on the building permit.
you've done no work? You've done no work, okay. All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you for being here. I appreciate you answering my questions.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to share something. My definite concern would be we get done and something would not be able to happen. And then the applicant comes back and, and expects the city to do something or to help out in this scenario. It's a very small lot for lateral lines, for an aerobic system, and there has to be some set of standards where we could have some foundation, even though if the existing system is, if it's even a good system as it is.
Is there any way I could address that? Do you
Yes.
mind?
Yeah, is there any liability on the city? for
Well,
something?
right. I mean, what I will tell you is that Amanda was gracious enough to include me in the conversations with this. And in this particular situation, staff was really starting with a can-do kind of attitude, only because we felt like this was going to be a very beneficial project to the city as a whole. And so when I looked at it from a legal standpoint, actually, I was the one that drafted that wordy language that talked about how they've got to meet city, state, and federal standards, and if they don't, then they don't get a certificate of occupancy. I mean, it's as simple as that. So he's actually, I'm going to call his wife out here. His wife is a lawyer and has been a lawyer for about 20 years. And so, and they also retained another attorney. So if the council is concerned about him not fully appreciating this, trust me, he does. I mean, they understand that there's a possibility that financially they could get so far into this that, they're not able to get the certificate of occupancy. But I think from staff's perspective, as long as there are appropriate safeguards for the council and for the city, which are, if they don't meet city, state, and federal standards, then the building sits. So in any event, that was the suggestion. They'll get the appropriate certifications. I mean, just like we did, I think, with the drainage on 7-Eleven, didn't we get a sealed report on that? We will ensure, I probably won't be here, but somebody from staff will ensure that the appropriate information and approval from DEQ is received. So anyway, thank you for letting me share that background. I thought that those facts were particularly important.
So there's no way you see that they could come back on the city, is what you're saying? They would just be sitting there? Okay. Are there any other questions? No, yeah, you can come down.
May I, she approach?
Yeah.
Just like to note also, this was unanimously approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission following their conversation.
Elizabeth Sherrock, I am his spouse, but also an attorney of 22 years, and I've dealt quite a bit with municipal law and issues like this, and I've gone to trial on matters not entirely dissimilar to this situation. And I think the one thing that hasn't been said is that we as the owner have quite a bit of discretion in who the tenant can be. And so we know the capacity of the system. It's been inspected. It's in good shape. And we can, rather than perhaps letting in a hair salon that is utilizing hundreds or thousands of gallons a day, we can choose and pick who we want to put in there. So we have gone into this eyes wide open.
Okay, thank you. To answer Mr. Goodwin's question, do we have an answer for that in regards to P and Z?
No, it just, in our notes here, it shows that they voted unanimously in favor of this.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Do I have a motion for approval?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 1539 with all of the conditions as written.
I'll second that.
Please cast your votes. Item 4 is consideration and possible adoption of resolution number 1540, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Bethany approving a site plan for parking lot development at 6632 Northwest 36th Street, Bethany, with certain conditions to be met before assurance of the occupancy permit for the parking lot. And I have a staff report.
Yes, you do. Back here for the same reason as before, staff cannot approve the site plan as it has been presented, and so the applicants have asked that it go to Planning and Zoning and come to you. Planning and Zoning did vote yes on this to send it forward for you. This is for 6632 Northwest 36th Street. This is for the development that's going on right over here across from our lawn here at what the ladies are calling 36 Square. They have a site plan in for a new parking lot. They are in definite need of parking, is my understanding, because of all the stuff going on over there. The site plan shows a 33-foot right-of-way. However, the current right-of-way for that area for 36th Street is 50 feet. So that is why we are here, because staff cannot approve the site plan with a 33-foot right-of-way instead of a 50-foot right-of-way. Mr. Caton is in the process of reviewing the drainage report. His final report will be based on what the right-of-way is, if it's going to be 33 feet or 50 feet. So he could have a, much like 7-Eleven, once we move forward after tonight, he can get a drainage report back to us based on what we decide this evening. Based on the recommendation of David Davis, Planning and Zoning approved the site plan contingent upon the applicant executing and delivering to the city a paving covenant, which will provide for future dedication of an additional 17 feet of right-of-way along Northwest 36th Street abutting the subject property. We have the paving covenant in our files in community development, so if this is something we do, we'll get it to the ladies. They'll fill it out, they'll notarize it. They're basically saying if we ever decide to widen that road, redo that road, they'll take the share of their costs and do their part for us allowing them that extra right-of-way that they need for parking. Both the applicants are here this evening, as well as their contractor, to answer any questions. Their main concern, I think, and I'll let them speak to it themselves, is that if we go to the 50-foot right-of-way, they're going to lose about 9 to 10 parking spots that they just really, really feel that they need, based on the businesses that are there currently and the businesses they're planning to recruit to come there. So,
Do we have any questions?
May
Yes, ma'am.
I? We have a plan with the comp plan, what we would like to happen on 36th Street. And we have, is there some discrepancy on the approach as well there? Is the approach concrete? Is that okay? I mean, is that all okay the way it is right now?
I'm not familiar with any problems with the approach as it is right now.
I am asking.
Yeah, I know.
I'm asking. So
If there are, I have not been advised.
Right, okay. So going back to what I said about the comp plan, my question would be, if we make this allowance now, it's going to affect everything up and down that street. Do we want to go with what is in the plan and with our ordinances, or do we want to make an exception? And that's what I think we have to decide as a council. I know that losing some of your property is not a good thing, and I'm excited about what you're doing. But I think that as the council that we also need to be looking ahead as to what the whole picture is going to be. So those are my thoughts.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Amanda. My understanding is the parking can still be allowed on that right-of-way. There's not any reason why they can't utilize that as parking space. Is that a correct assumption?
I believe you're correct, yes.
So you're really not going to lose any parking spaces. You're still going to have those. The only problem is, like was previously stated, if somewhere down the road they want to widen that road, they're going to widen the road, and you're going to lose that, 17 feet.
Correct.
Are there any other questions?
How would that mechanism, sorry, Mayor.
I, for one, am excited about what these ladies are doing, and I am excited about the comp plan. I do believe the comp plan is a living, breathing thing that needs to be looked at constantly. And I don't see anybody on 36th Street currently doing anywhere near what these ladies have already done. I, for one, am excited to see it completed.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think this is a great example of why we need to get our Title 15 ordinances in place, because it's apparent that, especially in Ward 2 in my neighborhood, the ordinances don't apply to this situation or our neighborhood. And so we're going to have this problem again and again and again. We had this with the STEM building related to the width of the roadway, and we're going to have this problem again and again and again, which is why I think we should sit down and have a workshop on Title 15 so that these small business owners don't have to go through the process when they could be making money and doing their thing. And we want small business in Bethany because we're open for business. So let's do what we can to help small business in Bethany. And this is a prime example and another reason why we have to push that through. If that was in place, we would not be talking about this right now.
Correct.
Can we hear from the applicants? Sure.
Would we have it any other way?
I'm Shannon Hull, and this is Brittany. You can talk to
I'm
her.
Brittany Hubble.
We're just really excited that we can put the parking lot in, and we agree that if you guys ever come in and you need us to move it back, we are more than willing to. We really feel that as we open up more businesses up and down 36th Street, we want the sidewalks. And so more businesses will come in, and then we'll move it back. Like, we're all for that. I feel that we really need more parking over there with the park going in. The adjoining properties next to us, it's kind of that same parking lot that I feel that we would just match them as well. And I think they've even said that they were under that same law, that when the street was widened, that they would go back too.
Are there any questions that you have? Mr. Todd, did you have any questions?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion. We have a second. Please cast your votes.
Can I high five her?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5 is a public hearing item for the purpose of providing information, including an analysis of potential positive or negative impacts and answering questions regarding the proposed Northwest 39th Gateway project plan. What I want to do is first I want to bring up Hank Moore, our Economic Development Director, to give us a little bit of a history of what has led us to this point. After Hank, we will hear from Jeff Sabin from the Center of Economic Development in the Bachelor Group.
Good evening. It's a good opportunity to be speaking behind the two candidates behind me, because they're just as much economic development as what this TIF proposal that we're looking at doing tonight. I want to back up in the fact that in 2016, the comp plan laid out a plan for moving the community forward. They recognized a few things: that Bethany lacked a variety of housing. They had a density restriction, which we addressed in the last charter vote this past spring. The city was resistant to change. It was losing competition to neighboring communities, and it was inability to find compromise in governance, and the fact that we weren't pursuing tourism. All those things were kind of a blueprint of how to move forward to the creating of TIF. And for the public to understand that the city operates from the revenues generated from sales tax and surpluses from utilities that the city provide. I can't tell you when the last time the city council voted to raise utility rates to help cover the cost of increasing costs of providing the city utilities to the residents and businesses. But sales tax is one of those things that is retail driven: food, hotels, clothing. Anything that generates sales tax has to be our prime focus, and a TIF helps us do that. TIF gives us the incentives that we can allocate that will generate interest in Bethany that would not be here today or in the near future. There are lots of communities that use TIFs. The law firm that we're using has created over 20 TIFs around the state and has been ultra successful. The difference of the TIF that we're proposing in these two TIFs of the 39th Street and the 23rd Street is that it's not project focus, it's district focus. Meaning it's not just about one project as the Waterside project was, that was just a 7-acre tract of land. This is about different parcels along Route 66 and along 23rd Street corridor. And as a result, it has a multifaceted approach. We are not giving anyone free money. What we are doing is we are taking monies that are generated from businesses that result from taking advantage of the incentives with TIF, that choose to invest in buildings, develop land, renovate, remodel, recreate opportunities here in Bethany that will not and do not exist. The 7-Eleven deal was a project that was negotiated with a grant dealing with just sales tax numbers. But we were able to bring that 7-Eleven to the table, get a deal, and begin construction. We will see the results of that by the end of this year. That's a little unusual. We're not going to get a 6-month turnaround on most of our projects. But it is a beginning step. It is an indicator that the city of Bethany, as Councilor Palmer said, is open for business and we're moving forward. The concerns of the past is that we have tried TIFs before and they weren't successful. Some of it was because the wrong developer, too narrow of scope, the documents weren't completed with, to meet the legal standards and statutes. So, but that has been a learning curve, and that's why it's ambitious for us to go after a larger TIF boundary that will allow us a wider scope. Let me go to 23rd Street before we talk about 38th. 23rd has some unique properties. We have the Tower Building that's been vacant for a long time, used to have a restaurant. It's going to take $2 or $3 million to invest in someone to take that property and do something with it. Something that's going to bring 200 or 300 jobs to Bethany. We haven't had an economic driver like that in a long time other than the two universities. I believe that the AT&T building that was bought with the help of the mayor, by getting it out of the portfolio of AT&T corporate, out of the investment banking type of thing to an individual buyer locally, gives us an opportunity to capture the opportunities in that building. Those are two big buildings on 23rd Street that offer a tremendous amount of opportunities for jobs and potentially retail. We bring more jobs here, we're going to bring more traffic here, we're going to bring more retail here, we're going to bring more restaurants here. I had a conversation with Councilor Todd yesterday about one restaurant that's here in town, and that I'm going to talk to the corporate people to see if I can use some of the incentives to have them double the size of their facility. That's how this thing can work for us, is that we're not going to bring a Walmart in, we're not going to bring a Target in, we're not going to bring a Home Depot, but we have to generate 100 new businesses of different sizes. And I believe that we are at the right time to do that. The traffic counts are growing on Council Road. The economy around us is booming. Yukon is exploding, Oklahoma City is exploding. And we need to use this new economic development tool to advance the financial stability of the city for the decades to come. We are barely getting by with our sales tax revenues and surpluses of utilities to meet the current operating expenses. We don't have any extras. There's not the $1 million to set aside for park improvements, major infrastructure disasters. So we have to look forward. And I think the TIF is our way of doing it, and it makes sense. Beauty about the TIFs, the way we structured it, is that we can bring the projects one by one before the council for just at least review, so that it's not smoke and mirrors, it's accountability. We'll bring different people to the table, have conversations with them. We'll make a TIF proposal to them. I'll come back to BETA, then to the council, and explain what we're offering and what's going to work. I think that openness and that transparency helps the public trust that the council is looking forward to the economic needs of this community. And we're looking at the revenue streams to sustain city operations at the standard and the quality of life that the citizens and businesses have come to expect. So it's with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff, and he'll have a full, more organized presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I have a soft voice, so I want to make sure you guys can all hear me. Okay. Right there. My name is Jeff Sabin. As the mayor pointed out, I work for the Center for Economic Development Law. My boss is Leslie and Dan Batchelor. Dan Batchelor actually wrote the TIF enabling legislation in the state and was key in helping promote the constitutional amendment that allowed it to even be written in the first place. And we drafted the first TIF project plan in the state, in Guyman, for their pork processing facility up there, and we've also defended TIF's legality up to the state Supreme Court multiple times. So we are kind of viewed as the experts in TIF. And anyway, tonight I just want to go over basics on what TIF is, for those of you who have not been exposed to it before, either in the prior Waterside project or just in general. I know there are several new members of the City Council. TIF stands for Tax Increment Financing. It's pretty much the only game in town if you want to have a very strong, locally controlled economic development tool if you're a city or a county. TIF allows cities, towns, and counties to apportion an increment of taxes generated within specific areas to finance specific project costs within a specified area. The TIF districts and the project areas may be the same geography. The project area may be a little bit broader than each TIF district. For example, if you capture increment revenue within a TIF district, but you need to do some public infrastructure improvements outside of that district, you can spend it there. But basically the increment is either ad valorem or sales taxes. If it's ad valorem taxes, it's the increased value in the TIF district with the ad valorem tax levies applied to that increase, as measured from the date the TIF district is created. So the day that a TIF district is created, the county assessor will set a base assessed value for that district, and that is the assessed value on the date of that creation. And then any increased value that the city is able to generate within that district, taxes on that increased value will be set up into a separate apportionment fund and will be authorized to pay select project costs. Same thing, similar thing anyway, with sales and other taxes. Any increased sales taxes that the city can generate, they can have those apportioned to the same apportionment fund to pay authorized project costs. This is an example, and we'll get to the 23rd Street project at a later agenda item. But basically, the area that's highlighted in yellow on this map is the proposed TIF district for the 23rd Street corridor. The red line area is the project area. You'll see that there are some potential public infrastructure improvements and streetscaping improvements that will be outside the increment district. Just so you guys are aware that there's two different project geographies within each project plan. This is a model that basically shows how TIF works. So the tax base, the current taxable value within a TIF district is set, and taxes on that base value continue to be distributed to the normal taxing bodies pursuant to state law. The increment is the revenue that's generated on increased value. And that increment is what is set aside into a separate apportionment fund and authorized and used to pay authorized project costs. TIF districts can last up to 25 fiscal years. But if they pay off all authorized project costs in each project plan, they will end as soon as those project costs have been paid off. Once the TIF district ends, all of the taxes on all of the new values will be distributed to the taxing bodies pursuant to state law. So they will get a windfall at the end of the TIF district's life. The project plan is the governing document for each TIF district. It sets the boundaries of the TIF district and the project area. It describes the type of public improvements and private investment that's anticipated within that increment district. It sets the project cost budget, and that's that authorized project cost that once you pay those off, the TIF district ends. It provides a description for the anticipated financing methods and sources that are going to be proposed, and it provides the necessary authorizations to implement the project plan. The statutory approval process for TIF districts is kind of long and convoluted. The city initiates the TIF district by adopting a resolution that establishes their intent to consider a project plan and also establishes a review committee to review the proposed project plan and provide a recommendation to the city. For the two project plans on the agenda tonight, the 23rd Street project plan, the city adopted a resolution of intent back in September. And for the 39th Street project plan, they adopted it this past December. The review committee is made up of representatives from each of the affected taxing jurisdictions, including the municipal governing body. So the city council and the planning commission both had representatives on the committee. And there are 3 members representing the public at large. For retail-focused TIF projects, one of those has to be either a retailer or a representative of a retailer, of a retail body of some kind, like a chamber of commerce or something. The review committee, once they meet, they go over the project plan, they determine whether or not it's eligible, and they make certain findings as to its impacts on the affected taxing jurisdictions and on the business activities within the community. They forward their recommendation on to the planning commission. The Planning Commission goes over the project plan. They make a determination that the project plan conforms with the city's comprehensive plan, and then they provide their own recommendation to the city council. Once the Planning Commission and the Review Committee have heard it, it goes before this body, the City Council, or for counties, the Board of County Commissioners, for a series of 2 public hearings. They have to be at least 14 days apart. The first public hearing, which is what's going on tonight for these 2 project plans, is designed strictly to provide information about each project plan and to answer any questions that you guys might have. The second public hearing, which is scheduled for April 16th, is designed to provide an opportunity for members of the public and those interested to express views pro or con about the project plans. Once the second public hearing is wrapped up, the City Council can consider an ordinance that actually approves the project plans and establishes the TIF districts. Are there any questions about general TIF questions before I move on to going over the specifics on the 39th Street project plan? The 39th Street project plan has a specific set of objectives. Mostly, the city wants to facilitate the development and redevelopment of the western gateway into the city on Route 66. And to do that, they are providing 3 TIF districts that will provide funding mechanisms to promote public investment, infrastructure improvements, create destinations that capitalize on Route 66 tourism potential and encourage additional private investment and activity, and to enhance pedestrian accessibility and safety. And we'll get into that a little bit when we talk about the public improvements that are proposed, and just generally to enhance the city's tax base. There are 3 increment districts proposed on the 39th Street project plan. They're tentatively labeled as A, B, and C in the project plan, and that's because we're proposing to defer the official date of creation for each of those. The Local Development Act allows for those creation dates to be deferred up to 10 years, and the goal of that is you want to have your TIF district come online pretty much right before a project kicks off, so you can take advantage of a longer period of time, that 25-year limitation, so you can have a broader increment stream to work with in providing incentives or providing money for your infrastructure and public improvements that you anticipate paying with the increment district. So increment district A is north of 39th, just east of the Lake Hefner Canal. It's proposed to be both an ad valorem and sales tax increment district. A mixed-use development is anticipated. The city has been in discussions with the developer. However, the project plan is not tied to any specific project or any specific developer at this point. But because of the mixed-use potential for that development site, there is a revenue sharing component that's proposed strictly for the ad valorem increment for TIF A, and that's basically to make the Putnam City School District whole for the increased student population that we anticipate. Increment District B is the old Waterside project. It's south of 39th, just east of Lake Overholser. Purely commercial development is anticipated there. It's also proposed to be ad valorem and sales tax. Increment District C consists of scattered sites, mostly on the south side of 39th, but a few on the north side, pretty much stretching all the way from the western part of the city limits to Rockwell. And that's anticipated to be several different commercial developments. There's a general project map of the proposed 3 TIF districts. You can see Increment District A there in blue, Increment District B in green, and the scattered sites in yellow, and with the red line showing the project area. In addition to some potential incentives to developers, there's specific public improvements in infrastructure that's anticipated to help have the TIF district help pay for. Those include utilities, including a potential new water source. There have been discussions about a new water well or 2, specifically on the McFarland property, which is in TIF A. But additionally, some water, storm sewer, drainage, and some other streets and streetscape projects. Traffic improvements and signalization to provide easy access to the new developments as they come up. Sidewalks and walkability improvements and connections, including a potential multi-use path along the north side of 39th Street that'll connect the Lake Overholser, Lake Hefner Trail inwards towards downtown Bethany, and then some lighting improvements. Another big component of the project cost budget for the 39th Street project plan is assistance and development financing, and this is the developer incentives. There's no specific incentive being proposed to any developer as part of the project plan. These are just broad budgetary authorizations. Any use of any kind of incentive will come back before the board with a specific development agreement to make sure that you're actually leveraging the private development for the assistance that they'll be giving, and to make sure that you're getting a quality investment in something that the city actually wants. But basically, assistance and development financing is assistance that incentivizes a project or makes a project feasible financially. A typical arrangement would be a payment for a developer to reimburse him or her for any improvements that they make, specifically public improvements. And they're reimbursed with increment as it's generated for the most part. In certain cases, and this has been floated around for some projects in the 39th project plan, there might be some private placement revenue notes, which would be backed strictly by TIF, but that's another way of basically allowing a pay-as-you-go basis so that the developer can get reimbursement of increment revenues as it's generated, but he'll have some kind of commercial paper he can take to a bank to help secure his personal financing. The project cost budget for the 39th Street project plan, you'll see $18.5 million proposed for public improvements and infrastructure, $60 million allocated for assistance and development financing, and then a $9 million implementation or contingency, for a total project cost budget of $87.5 million. That does not include revenue sharing for Putnam City Public Schools. Specifically, based on our projections for each of these 3 increment districts, the project plan presents caps of $50 million from TIF A, $15 million from TIF B, and $25 million from TIF C. Once each of those increment districts generates that level of increment, or the entire project is able to pay off all of their authorized project costs, that specific increment district or the project plan as a whole will terminate. Revenue sharing for Putnam City Public Schools. As I noted, this is not included in the total project cost budget. Basically, it's 10% of the ad valorem increment generated within TIF A, and that's specific revenue source is a specific term under the Local Development Act and the Oklahoma Constitution. Basically, it's a payment directly to the school district that's not tied to their state school aid formula. So when you account for state school aid offsets, every new dollar, ad valorem dollar that a school district gets is usually offset to where they 85% of it they don't get because it's offset. So this 10% makes up a little bit of the difference between what the school district would have gotten if any of the development in the TIF District A were able to happen without the TIF District's help. The specific authorizations. The city is designated as the principal public entity to carry out and administer the project plan, but BDA is authorized to assist in carrying out the project plan, to incur project costs, to make long-term revenue pledges, which the city is not able to do under the Constitution, and to provide funds or reimburse the city for any of the infrastructure costs that it may reimburse. There also would be the entity who would be issuing any TIF-related debt. The impacts on the affected taxing jurisdictions, according to the financial impacts reports that you guys should have received in your council packet and that the review committee reviewed as well and approved, Putnam City Schools will be getting that 10% revenue stream, and it won't be subject to state school aid formula, so they will be positively benefited. There's really no specific measurable demand of increased services for any of the other jurisdictions, except possibly the library. But the library seemed very much on board with this kind of thing. In fact, all of the taxing jurisdictions did. They see this as an investment in the community that will pay off for them in the long run. The biggest impacted taxing jurisdiction is the city. Hopefully, if we're successful in creating the development that we anticipate, there'll be significant additional sales tax revenue to the city's coffers. But that'll also come along with some negative impacts associated with maintenance and providing services to the new developments. Impacts on business activities in the community. We anticipate, based on our projections, approximately 1,600 temporary jobs and $60 million in temporary payroll. We anticipate approximately 146 new residential units. That number may be in flux. And those new household units will have an income of over $7 million. Our projections relied on about $123 million of new investment, about $89 million of which is commercial. Increased pedestrian safety in connection to Lake Overholser and connection of the Oklahoma City trails to the 39th Street businesses in downtown Bethany. We also believe we'll anticipate some additional patronage of those businesses. Questions?
I'd like to ask if there are any public comments before we hear from council. Is there anyone? Yes, sir. Would you please step to the microphone?
I didn't hear half of what he said because of hearing aids. But where would the money come from? Is it property tax and what have you?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah. TIF does not raise anyone's taxes. All it does is capture the so your tax revenue, your tax rate won't go up. But if the city is able to contract with developers or get additional projects that increase the value within the TIF district, your regular tax rate applied to that increased value.
So the tax base would go up.
The tax base would go up, but the tax rate would not go up.
I'm thinking about the old people like me on fixed incomes.
Well, I mean, citywide taxes for the city will not be affected. The tax rate itself will not be affected. There's no new taxes being proposed by this. All this does is capture taxes on the new value.
I was
that's
wondering
created.
because I couldn't hear half of what you said, but that was the main thing.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that has a question or comment? Is anyone on the council? Yes, Mr. Knapp.
I just have a question. Whether Jeff or chairman of the TIF review committee, would you remind me what was the vote by the taxing entities or the review committee? Any recollection?
They recommended unanimously.
Unanimous?
Yes.
That's what I thought, but I wanted to just confirm that.
And for the council's benefit, tell us who that was.
Who?
Who was on that committee that came in? We had a representative from which taxing entities?
We had representatives from Oklahoma County.
Which was who?
Butch Freeman.
Butch Freeman, the tax assessor, correct?
Correct.
For Oklahoma County?
Treasurer.
Treasurer for Oklahoma County. Who else was there?
Carol Fadepour, who's the CFO for Francis Tuttle Public Schools. There was a representative, I don't remember his title, with Putnam City Public Schools. There was a representative from the Metropolitan Library Commission, and there was a representative from the Oklahoma City County Health Department.
And everyone, as a part of the discussion for the TIF Review Committee, unanimously approved this to the extent that, is it safe to say that they thought that this would be a great advancement for the city of Bethany related to commercial and residential property and the whole system? Is that fair?
That's fair.
I'd just like to make a comment.
Yes.
I know that in the previous TIF that we attempted, Butch Freeman, the treasurer, I'll just quote him. He said, "I can't believe Bethany has not done this before." It's a great tool, and as basically what I've heard in summary is it's a long-term investment by these taxing entities.
Any other questions?
Would you mind touching base on the sales tax increment?
Yes. So each of the increment districts are proposed to be ad valorem and sales tax. How that is calculated is a little bit different for each. The sales tax increment is proposed across the board. It will only affect the city's undedicated sales tax rate. And from that, it'll only be 90% of that, and that's to account for some degree of cannibalization from other businesses that we want to account for. So basically, In TIF District A and TIF District B, because we anticipate working with one developer for each of those TIF districts, it would include new construction sales taxes and any development agreement
Can
that we
you
would bring.
speak closer to the mic, please?
Sorry. For TIF A and TIF B, it would include construction sales taxes, and any development agreement that we bring before you for your approval would require the developer to provide invoices for the construction sales taxes and require them to have a City of Bethany delivery point for any of their construction materials. But then it would also include new sales taxes generated by any retail development ongoing through the life of the TIF district, subject to that 90% allocation to account for any potential cannibalization from other businesses in the city.
So 90% of our sales, 90% of our sales tax will go back to the developer for 25 years?
90% of your undedicated 3.3% sales tax. It does not touch the CIP budget or the CIP sales tax.
And that's for a term of 25 years?
Yes, and it's only on sales taxes generated within the increment district.
Yeah, it doesn't touch the CIP.
Can you explain that? What does that mean, doesn't touch the CIP?
Cities have the ability to decide a formula for their sales tax increment districts. It's not set strictly by statute like the ad valorem increment component is. Basically, as long as your formula is reasonable, of course we'll go with it. So what we've proposed is, so the city has 4% sales tax overall. 3.3% of that is undedicated, which is, it goes straight to the general fund. 0.7% goes to the specifically dedicated for capital improvement projects. We're proposing the sales tax increment formula for TIF A and TIF B to be 90% of the 3.3% general fund sales tax revenues created within the increment district. Not any of the 0.7%. So any new sales that are generated, that 0.7% for CIP will continue to go into the CIP fund for use for those projects.
And currently, you mentioned 2 TIF developments on 39th Street, and we're getting 0 sales tax from either of those pieces of property right now. So it would be a plus at this point with where we are.
The sales tax calculation for TIF C is a little bit different. It still has the same 90% of the 3.3% general fund sales tax formula, but deciding what counts as increment, it does not include any construction sales taxes, and it only includes sales taxes that are generated for projects under which the city has a development agreement with a developer that calls for some kind of sales tax reimbursement arrangement. So it'll be a lot easier to track for the finance department here.
In the other towns that you've done TIFs for, have you gone as high, has other towns given away 90% of their sales tax for 25 years?
We've given away 100% in
Really?
some instances. It's a discretionary item on the city's part. We try to do something that reasonably captures the new development and the new revenue generated within the increment district.
Will the developer get that sales tax, or will that be going back to the retailers?
That's that's undetermined at this point. That'll be part of a development agreement that's negotiated at some future point. But as of right now, any of the increment revenue just gets put into that apportionment fund and sits in that pot ready to be spent on those project cost budgets.
And a lot of times, I don't mean to speak for Jeff, but a lot of times the taxing entities will want the cities to participate by way of sales tax.
Yeah, this is a
right.
show of good faith from the city.
It's a show of good faith on the city's part. I mean, the ones that I've been involved in the past, there has been a sales tax component. So.
Which Bethany has. I mean, we just gave 7-Eleven 60% for 7 years.
Well, and this is the increment, right? Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, the existing sales tax would not be impacted.
Do I understand correctly that on those infrastructure costs, regardless of where they are, whether they're on the city property or within the development property, The city will do those infrastructure and get repaid, so they're gonna be out the money up front?
Well, that's not what's anticipated at the moment. That is a potential possibility, but any kind of debt issuance would require authorization from city council, and, the debt proposals would have to go before the state bond oversight council and all that kind of stuff. But in general, right now, what is anticipated is reimbursing developers for putting in the public infrastructure so that they have to come up with the money up front. And then they're reimbursed as their projects generate increment.
The developer is reimbursed?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a potential, especially for some projects that don't require the developer being reimbursed for 100% of the increment that their project generates, that there could be some additional money building up in the apportionment fund that's not going to pay back the developer, that the city could use and pile up and use to pay those costs or to build that public infrastructure on its own. But right now, anything like that is anticipated to be on a pay-as-you-go basis, not any kind of upfront debt.
Is there any way, we had a situation on some property out there that the infrastructure got put in, but the development did not occur for a good number of years. So consequently, the city, if I understood what happened, because it was before my time, they were out the money for that infrastructure. Now, the good thing is we're going to take advantage of it. It's already done in that particular area because it's included in one of these districts. But I would hate the city to have a repeat performance of that. So that's why I'm asking, are we somewhat protected, or is that all going to be part of the negotiation with the various people that we're hoping will come?
There needs to be adequate, conditions on receipt of money in each development agreement, so that if the developer doesn't perform, the city does not have to give any money out. Additionally, if a private placement revenue note is issued to a developer, they won't get any money back either unless their project generates money. It's all performance-based incentives.
Okay. Thank you.
I think the important part that's not being talked about is that the law firm is also going to help us to ensure that the developer is financially sound and able to execute the project, which wasn't done before. And so, they've got to put streets in when you put a neighborhood in. That's a developer cost. That's not a reimbursement. But if we're going to do signalization out on 39th Street, that would be something that would be. But the idea is that we're not doing this alone. They're going to help us identify the financial stability of the developers on the individual projects to execute.
Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve resolution.
Hold on. No. Item 6 is announcement Tuesday, April 16th, 2019. Again, that is Tuesday, April 16th, 2019, as the date of the second public hearing for the purpose of giving members of the public an opportunity to be heard prior to any vote on the proposed Northwest 39th Gateway project plan. Item 7 is a public hearing for the purpose of providing information, including an analysis of potential positive or negative impacts and answering questions regarding the proposed 23rd Street corridor project plan.
Hello again. Long time no see. So the 23rd Street corridor project plan, hopefully this will go a little bit quicker. So the construction of infrastructure, so the objectives from this particular project plan largely come out of the plans for the 23rd Street corridor in the city's comprehensive plan. So the idea of this is to help build up that public revenue pot to make a lot of the infrastructure improvements called out in the comprehensive plan. In turn, that infrastructure will help catalyze new development and expand employment opportunities and attract other investment and reinvestment within the area, and hopefully reverse some of the economic problems that have plagued the 23rd Street corridor for the last decade or so. Additionally, the goal of the city is to create a viable and attractive mixed-use area along 23rd Street that can be accessible to the neighborhoods that surround it, and really to highlight specific redevelopment prospects at key locations that can serve as catalytic projects to inspire other projects both inside the TIF district that will help generate additional increment revenue for additional public projects, and just to incentivize and new projects in general along 23rd Street. This project plan proposes only one increment district, and the increment district is set up very similarly to TIF C from the 39th Street project plan, in that it's more prospective in nature. We're not specifically dealing with any specific developer at this point. There are a few leads that Hank mentioned in his opening comments, but any kind of negotiations for specific projects is very, very preliminary at the moment. But basically, TIF A is ad valorem and sales tax. The sales tax is that same 90% of the 3.3% general fund sales tax generated by projects pursuant to a redevelopment agreement that calls for some kind of sales tax reimbursement as a part of the incentive. And it's basically scattered sites along 23rd Street that we think are primed for reinvestment. Commercial development is anticipated. As far as we know at this point, we don't anticipate any residential development in the TIF district itself. The projected 25-year increment revenue, and this would be caps, so once each category of increment reaches these levels, that particular portion of the increment would stop. 25-year increment revenue projections of $15 million for ad valorem increment, $13 million for sales tax. You might note that that's significantly less than what the 39th Street project plan had, even though the 23rd Street TIF district covers a larger area. And a lot of that has to do with that most of the 23rd Street corridor TIF district lies within areas that are currently developed or currently have some kind of assessed value assigned to them besides the land cost. And that means that you'll have that higher base value so that the extra value that's generated by city projects will be smaller over that period of time. This is the map of the proposed TIF district and project area. If you have any questions about geography before we move on, me or Hank can help pinpoint specific parcels. Otherwise, public improvements proposed include streets and streetscapes along the entire corridor, traffic improvements and signalization improvements, more and wider sidewalks and walkability improvements and connections, and some decorative lighting. Assistance in development financing is also proposed for this project plan. Again, we would use the same. Giving any developer any kind of assistance would require a development agreement that ensures adequate consideration and enforceability and make sure that the city is getting a high quality project that it actually wants. The budget for this project plan, $8 million is budgeted for public improvements. $17.5 million is for assistance in development financing, and a $2.5 million implementation or contingency amount, for a total project cost budget of $28 million. The city is again designated as the principal entity to carry out and administer the plan, and BDA is authorized to incur project costs, issue any TIF debt, pledge revenues, provide funds to reimburse the city, etc. This is the same authorizations as with the 39th Street project plan. Because there's no residential component anticipated, there's no revenue sharing with the Putnam City Public Schools, and there's also little to no measurable impacts on the demand for services. They also think that the increased walkability will help students at some of the nearby facilities. There's no measurable demand for increased services for the county, the library, Francis Tuttle. The county health department was also very excited about the potential increase in walkability along 23rd Street. They think it'll help a lot of their public health objectives. And again, the city is the one that's most impacted by this. Positive with the additional sales tax revenue, and then negative again with maintenance of the new public infrastructure and providing services to all the new development. The impacts on business activities, this is based on our projected $46 million in new private investment that we think we can generate on 23rd Street. That will result in about 600 temporary jobs and $22 million in temporary payroll. All of that is proposed for commercial development. The increased pedestrian safety and connection through a key commercial corridor of the city, we think will be beneficial for the businesses along that and helping them establish an identity. I know there's an active 23rd Street Business Owners Association. We hope to work with them a lot on helping do these new public improvements in their design and helping them make their businesses more profitable. Just in general, the impact on the business activities here, more so than 39th Street, is that we want to highlight specific key projects to provide assistance to that will serve as catalysts for additional private investment outside the TIF district and within the TIF district. Doing so not only will be beneficial for the city in the long run, but it'll be beneficial for the existing active commercial and business owners. That was quicker than the first one, so I anticipate more questions.
Are there anyone from the public that have any questions about the 23rd Street corridor? Mr. Carlson?
I would just like to offer a couple of comments on a personal level as a property owner impacted on the 23rd Street. As it happened yesterday, marked 24 years that I've been retired and working on trying to enhance the properties and the sales tax revenues in the city. Mrs. Larson and Mr. Knapp served on the steering committee for the comprehensive plan. The prior comprehensive plan was 1972, so it was high times, and I think that this is an additional tool that we need to move forward on developing, redeveloping, and coming to KP's famous heyday for 23rd Street. In the last 4 years, there's been more activity starting on 23rd Street, but there's been more challenges also. We have roughly 11% of our total sales tax revenue comes from the 2 grocery stores that are located on 23rd Street. Neither one of them are in owner-occupied properties, so we need to do everything we can to ensure that these tax generators stay in place and that we have additional ones. I'm aware of other activities like the AT&T building, the recently exciting news to come shortly on the Western Oaks Tower. We have a golden opportunity here, and I think the time is coming. I'm very enthused about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
This can probably wait till the next hearing, but I was just wondering if you could explain the difference between the projects and the district itself, and as time goes by, if those shift at all, or is this permanent at this point?
The increment district will be set to amend the increment district would require an amendment to the project plan, so the specific property that will generate increment is set, but specific projects within the TIF district will be done on an individual negotiated basis with property owners and developers who want to come in and redevelop the property. A lot of that will be spearheaded by Hank in his discussions with particular business owners and landowners.
Just had a question on the amount of percentage in the midst of a city that can be in a TIF district, and what that percentage would be with this, and what would be left following that.
Including 39th and the 23rd Street TIF districts comes out to about 7.5% of the city's land area. TIF districts in cities the size of Bethany can be up to 35% of the land area, or 25% of the land area, or 35% of the assessed valuation when the TIF district is created. So we're well within those limits.
Anyone else? Mr. Knapp?
I just have another comment. I will echo Mr. Carlson's remark about this is a golden opportunity. If we look around nearby in what the mayor refers to as Bethany's largest suburb, there's a 50-story building downtown. And that and all of the area around it were part of a TIF project. If you've been downtown, you've seen the development. It's the story around the country that's being looked at, and even out of the country. I visited with a minister of something from the Kingdom of Bahrain who brought 50 people to Oklahoma to see what we're doing in Oklahoma City. Or not what we're doing, but we can take advantage of small pieces of that, and we need to. This is a step toward that.
What Mr. Carlson had referred to is I asked him 2 years ago when was 23rd Street's heyday, and he's told me that 23rd Street had never had a heyday, and so this is a part of trying to create a heyday for 23rd Street, and not just 23rd Street, but all of Bethany, quite honestly. So,
Mr. Mayor, I realize this is a lot of information for you guys to process in a short period of time, and there's only one more scheduled, or at least statutory scheduled, public hearing on this. I think we're open to having an additional public work session next week.
We
If
are.
you guys have additional questions after some additional
yes,
browsing of
we
materials.
are having a TIF workshop April 9th at 6 p.m. So mark your calendars. That's April 9th at 6 p.m. for a TIF workshop. Are there any other questions from council?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I have, in trying to speak up for the businesses that are out of here, I think it's vital that they know what's going on. And as far as I know, I think most of our publication of these public hearings have been through the media, not really any contact directly with those people, whether it's from downtown or out to almost to the bridge. And having been a former business owner, I know that in running the business, that my priorities are in that business, and city business, unless it affects me directly, doesn't usually get much of my attention. This directly affects those people that are already having tax dollars and supporting this city, and I'm wondering, is there anything that we can do to be sure that they're on board? You know, we did a lot of promoting for the comp plan for the library, but I do have a concern about the dollars that are being provided and those people that are getting it done for us. Are we doing all we can do? Grant the chamber is doing it for their members, and they're having the breakfast, the mayor's having the breakfast, but I'm just wondering if we're getting any more contact than that. Is that a...
Have we met all the legalities as regards to the public meetings and the notifications that go out to the public?
Yes. The Local Development Act requires publication in the newspaper at least 2 weeks out from the first public hearing. It also requires that the information be published on the city's website. That has both occurred.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me do this in a proper way. I didn't introduce myself before. I'm Paige Porter, and I am a representative of the Northwest Oklahoma City Chamber. I am a Bethany resident, and I also am on the Vision 23 board, which is the group that you were discussing earlier that will be working, hopefully, with this TIF proposal to help revitalize 23rd Street. What I wanted to address is that not only is the chamber on board with helping with the publicity and getting the word out, but as a resident, and I live 2 blocks south of 23rd Street, I know that that particular area needs a lot of hands-on work. So we are currently devising those plans in Vision 23. The board is talking about what do we need to do for a kind of foot campaign where we can really go out and talk to our local businesses. I just spoke recently as an invite to the Bethany Breakfast, which will be happening on Thursday, April 4th, right, at 8:30 in the morning. But I was speaking to businesses and have some stories that I've directly related to Mr. Moore and to the mayor about concerns about past workings with the city. And for the most part, they don't know, you are correct, they don't know what's happening. So we are planning in Vision 23 to launch a kind of foot campaign to get out and really start to know our businesses and make sure that the ones that have been there are feeling anchored in what's happening through the information that we're giving. We also will be having a town hall, hopefully in May, that will answer and direct questions about the revitalization.
Primarily on 23rd Street?
Yes, it's absolutely 23rd Street. We are primarily focusing right now on Council to Rockwell, but that will expand, definitely expand. So we know we have multiple ways that we have to reach out to that community, and we're actively pursuing how to do that. But through the Bethany Breakfast, through the town hall that we'll do in May, that will just be for those stakeholders, and then just getting out and really discussing with those businesses so that they know what we know. That's why I'm here tonight, to learn about this, and then reflect that back to them, not only as part of the chamber, but absolutely as part of Vision 23.
I know in my experience this last week, I posted about this tonight on Facebook in the neighborhood areas around us in our ward. Not all of them, because I'm not on all of them, but the ones I am. And I think there were some people here tonight and watching on the television or wherever that are doing it because someone reached out to let them know about it. And I know they're watching because they told me they were going to. I would think that as council members, one thing that we could do is visit those businesses in our wards and encourage them to know about these opportunities that they have. Because that one-on-one and find out how they feel about it, you know, we might learn something that would help us down the road.
Yes.
In what they want and what they need, you know, let them partake in this.
I think you're absolutely right, and I want to thank you for your post because that is actually how I was alerted that this was happening. So I appreciate that we just need to not make assumptions right now that everyone knows what's happening and really just touch base and take care of our community holistically by letting us know and getting those people informed. We've got to keep them feeling relevant as we go through this revitalization process. And if they don't know what's happening, then it just appears that other businesses are coming in and that they have been replaced or forgotten. So I just think it's important that we incorporate who's there.
I know if I had a flyer, I'd hit every one of them from the bridge east.
If I could walk that way, I would.
Well,
I quit my jobs and I would just walk around and put up flyers. So.
Are there any other questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor?
I would like to make one comment, is that I have done a lot of one-on-one talk with most people on 38th and 23rd and SNU and with the Southwestern. A lot of one-on-one talks. Primarily looking at opportunities and getting their feedback. But it's hard to go out there and talk about a TIF that's not been approved. And so I don't want to create too much information out there until we have something that we for sure are going with. Then we can fill them in on details. But if they start asking for details and we don't have it because we don't have the authorization, we haven't moved forward, it's sort of getting ahead of the game. But the bigger players, and when I refer to players, the Ville Shopping Center, Mr. Brown, the two universities, those people, the car lot owners, there are a lot. I probably have met with two people at the First Bank in Bethany here to begin talking about the commercial loans, to begin talking about that. So it is going out there, but it's not been a coordinated campaign yet. That will have to come a little bit past this public hearing stage, and we get once we do that, I think the community is going to be astounded that we're moving this way. I think it's great news.
Absolutely. That's all.
Mr. Mayor, just a statement. You know, I think we have the tendency to look at the negative side of a TIF in regard to what the tax disadvantages are, and we forget about the millions of dollars of public improvements that are also associated with this TIF. I mean, literally millions of dollars are going to go directly into public improvements that we don't have to pay for.
Right.
And that's a big part of this. I think that's something we need to remember.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Did you have anything else, Mr. Saban?
No, just to, I guess, emphasize that TIF is still an empty bucket. The main work is actually going forward and getting things on paper and development agreements and making things happen. Because without that happening, the TIF as an empty bucket won't fill up with any money for you guys to use. So this is essentially a first step. Crafting a plan and a policy on how you're going to use it is what's going to be the big driving part. And for that, there will need to be a broader public engagement, both for the specific kinds of projects that would get public assistance and for the infrastructure projects that the city considers paying for. So,
absolutely. Thank you. Item 8 is announcement. Tuesday, April 16th, 2019 is the date of the second public hearing for the purpose of giving members of the public an opportunity to be heard prior to any vote on the proposed 23rd Street corridor project plan. I'd also like to say that I don't remember how many months ago or a year ago or whenever it was that the previous council was looking far enough forward that we hired the Economic Law Center and the Bachelor Group to help us create these corridors and these TIF areas so that we could start doing a lot of the legwork and paperwork so that developers could see that we are open for business and there are things here that they could come in and develop and redevelop. So I'm excited that we're making forward progress. Item 9 is consideration and possible approval of a contract between the City of Bethany and the YMCA of Greater Oklahoma City, Bethany YMCA, for operation of the municipal swimming pool 2019 season. I have a staff report.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, Mr. Smart. I was approached about midweek last week from Chief Cole to present this agenda item and speak on the narrative. Historically, our municipal pool has been operated and ran by elements of two departments. Our water treatment plant, namely the water superintendent, Tom Seymour, and also the staff of the park department. And also historically, municipal pools, anybody that's owned a pool at their residence realizes there's quite a bit of money that goes in the pool. You know, a municipal pool is even more so. They do tend to operate in the red, but it's a quality of life issue and a service for the public. So the communities that have municipal pools usually support that deficit to maintain that quality of life item. You should have the narrative and information in your packet. I'll refer to some of it here. We also have the director of the local YMCA, Nathan Donald, here, who would be more than happy to speak to any details concerning this proposed agreement. We had some meeting with staff and staff in the YMCA back on February 13th. And then several emails were generated back and forth by city staff to, discuss the partnership. And it rendered down. The agreement contains some positives and probably some other things that were looked at that might not be considered positive, but could be considered a direction we could try going into. I'll explain that. The YMCA rendered down in the agreement that you have is going to hire, train, and provide lifeguards for the pool, and also some of the routine maintenance and routine water testing. They will also stock and run the concession. That is the catalyst, as I understand it, to seek an agreement with the YMCA was the staffing of the lifeguards. You know, those are usually young adults, and we run 15 lifeguards at the pool, and those young adults often have to go somewhere with their parents during the summer, so scheduling's a problem, covering all the bases. And the YMCA has a greater ability to pull from their pool of resources and also more easily overcome the hurdle of getting the lifeguards certified. That was also proving to be a challenge on the city side. The pros of the agreement, the dates will remain the same, and the hours open to the public swimming would remain the same. The nuts and bolts of the operations, meaning water quality and the upkeep of the pool, will remain with city staff. We'll have control of that. This was a point that was passionately brought forward with our water treatment superintendent, Tom Seymour. And that guy is a true asset and jewel to the city organization. He's very, very passionate about his job, and he's very, very good at it. If you have a water treatment man that can make good water to the point that you don't have to notify your citizens of exceedances in your water, that's something, and on his watch there has been none. Now Tom will definitely offer you his opinion, often unfiltered like his water, but he has a passion for it, and he was the most vocal in some of the points in this agreement. But he is an agreement with this final draft that we have before you. Tom Seymour was adamant that the city staff would continue to test the water in the pool and maintain the water quality, and then that is a very, very wise move to have. The additional another pro for this agreement that I read in there was the YMCA will offer additional aquatic programs that the city doesn't offer. So in a nutshell, the citizens will still have the same hours and days that they can go swim. They'll be offered further programs to participate in, and then the city will not have to go through the hurdles to hire and maintain staff. Some of the things that were considered was that the revenue generated at the pool, the Y will keep that. That's a plus for them. There is an increase stated in there for a fee of entering the pool that it was worded as no more than $5. Currently, we have an age-structured multi-tier fee to get in the pool that's under $4 and stair steps down based on age. And then there is also a statement in the agreement that says there is a reimbursing of the Y to offset incurred expenses not covered by revenue. And that's something to consider too. There is a walk-away clause, I'll call that, for a 2-week notice. Either side can terminate the agreement, so that's a good safety catch. However, thinking about how close we are to pool season and that this is a 1-year contract, probably regardless would be good to just see how things go for the first year. This is, as I mentioned, a 1-year contract, so we would be monitoring this and looking at it at the end of the year and see how the numbers worked out as far as the money taken in and money spent on the pools. And then also, it's my understanding Guthrie was contacted, and the CEM there reports that they have been very satisfied with the arrangement with the YMCA and thought it's a very, very beneficial thing for the city. That said, there's an upside and some things to consider that might not be considered an upside. Staff, as it says in the narrative, recommends approving the contract as presented. Personally, as I read it, it's a year contract. I don't believe it's a big roll of the dice, but it's a good litmus test to see, what things can be improved at the pool and provide a better service for the patrons, which is the main goal of everything we do. That said, if there's any specific questions, I would be happy to try to answer them. If I can't, hopefully Nathan can field them and he can step up here, and I'll entertain those.
Are there any questions?
Yes, can you explain the 2-week walk away by both parties? That seems real short to me.
It does.
Should the Y walk away, we're left holding the bag, not even able to hire lifeguards to keep the pool open.
Correct. That's why I added that caveat that, if that were to occur, that, if there were any issues, then we probably want to sit down and hammer those out, because we wouldn't want to run into a situation where we would have to reduce the hours or close the pool. The way it is worded in there, sir, is it should become necessary for either the YMCA or the City of Bethany to terminate this agreement, a minimum of 2 weeks' notice shall be given in writing by either party. Would you like to come up, sir?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate this opportunity to address you guys this evening. So that 2-week clause is very standard to what we have in other contracts with municipalities, and we've been operating city pools from Chickasha to Guthrie to Stillwater for many years now, and I'm very thankful to share that we've not ever had to execute that clause on either end of the bargain. So I believe that was just a standard policy that we've adopted from other policies in the past.
Does our contract with the city of Bethany mirror that of all the others, or what would be different with our contract versus, say, Guthrie's or somebody else's?
So the standard contract is almost identical. I actually used that as the blueprint when we first started the proposal process. One of the main standards that we did deviate from after consulting with staff was, in other cities, we have an administration fee that's a flat rate instead of the reimbursement fee. And I was asked to adjust that in a meeting, so that's why that adjusts back to where it states that the Y will provide financials, and any incurred expenses that aren't covered by revenue will be then reimbursed back to the Y. In other cities, I believe Guthrie currently is a $5,000 fee. I was given previous 3 years of financials, and it seems like in the city's past 3 years, the incurred expenses exceeded revenue on average of about $10,000, and so that's what the original proposal included, just to try to have an average of what we saw in those financials for previous 3 years.
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to say how excited I am about a partnership with the city that the library is doing, yet another, if this passes. This is a really good example of how the city can partner with others to make things happen. And I just want to say I think this is a good idea. If there isn't any other discussion and it would be open for a motion to approve, I would like to.
Are there any other questions?
KP, I would like to say that I had the occasion to go to Guthrie at least twice a week. And when this proposal first came up, 2 months ago or so, I made a point to go by the city offices there and talk to the city manager myself, and spent 20 minutes with him talking about this very topic. And he tells me, the city manager of Guthrie, tells me that they are very happy they did it, and they would do it for perpetual, as for indefinite time. They just regret they didn't do it sooner. And that's their input, and that's what I was looking for, is how's it working for them? And so with that, I'll turn it on.
Are there any other questions?
I have a couple. It said that non-members would pay up to $5. What would members of the YMCA pay?
So in the past, in previous agreements, YMCA members were allowed to use the pool without cost. So,
I love the idea of this partnership because I think it'd take a load off of Pedro, hiring and coordinating lifeguards. But if the city is going to pay the difference at the end of the year, we're allowing members of the YMCA who pay a membership to the Y to come to our facility for free, who may have paid at our facility for in previous years. So, and then we're going to reimburse and actually pay for their members potentially to go swim at there for free. And then we have the same pool that a private organization runs, and the kids from the neighborhood, which a lot of it's low income around there, are paying $5 to where if you're a member of a private organization, you get in there for free. I'm not even sure if that's illegal because this is a city paid for pool. Beth Ann, I'd take your advice on there. Because taxpayers did pay for this, and it had a large renovation early 2000s with taxpayer money.
Well, I mean, I had an opportunity to review the agreement last week, and I didn't see that as being a particular problem. I mean, like, for example, you know, there are parks in different areas that, now, while you don't necessarily charge admission fees for those, you know, in this particular case, and probably he can speak more to this, but I don't know that you're going to have a huge influx of because where's the closest YMCA?
It's off of Mueller. We're
Okay.
located just on the other side of the
Would
library.
I mean, I guess, would you anticipate that it would have, I mean, because you said you looked at the financials, would you anticipate that would have a huge financial impact?
I believe Y members would use the pool. I'm not sure if those same members have used it previously. I can't speak to that. I do believe that the majority of the users will be very consistent to what was there before, and My best guess was it was a lot of children to teens and families that would take advantage of the opportunity to have a great summer day at the pool.
And the only reason I ask that question is just to ensure that there's adequate consideration for it. And one of the things, at least from a legal perspective, frankly, that really appealed to me about this is the fact that the WISE insurance kicks in, and you know, the city actually, I think, is named as additional insured on it. I mean, renting water facilities, I mean, I lifeguarded for a gajillion years. I have a pool. It's kept me up at night. And so, you know, when, in terms of consideration shifting risk, I think that tends to offset the non-fee.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
You know, I would remind, you do know we have a slide at the pool, right? You know, that might be a liability that you should report to your insurance carrier if we do adopt this agreement. You're fully aware of that risk, correct?
I'm fully aware, yes, sir.
Well, thank you.
One
Thank
more
you for
question.
being here at 10 o'clock at night, by the way.
He's our
Happy to
resident
be here.
attorney.
By the way.
One more question.
Yes,
The
ma'am.
senior sneakers, single.
Silver
Yeah,
sneakers.
there it is.
Yes, ma'am.
Will they be able to use it through their programs as
So
well?
our hope is through the course of the summer that we would incorporate youth swim lessons, a developmental swim league to allow children increased access to the pool, and then also, if possible, also add additional water exercise classes out there as well with an instructor to lead those. And I believe that would definitely allow all members to use that structure as well.
So if Mrs. Councilman Larson shows up at the pool, will you give her a formal welcome and make sure that she's, you know, benefiting from this new service that's being provided to the residents of the city of Bethany? Can we do that?
No concerns here.
Mayor,
Do
do
I-
I make another comment?
Yes, sir.
So, the pool does operate in the red at a loss, but I live in close proximity to the pool, and there's kids walking there from Bryan Hill Apartments on a daily basis, teenagers. And I'm going back to, I'm afraid $5 is gonna put them out to where that's not gonna be a feasibility, and we're operating in the red anyway. This is a quality of life. We're trying to improve our parks, and there's a lot of low income there. At other parks, we're creating things that are free, but here we're actually raising the cost.
What is the pay structure last summer as it was with the city?
It's my understanding, Mayor.
Mike?
Sorry.
I called Marla this afternoon to ask her that very question. She did give me some age groups. I do have those sitting on my desk, but to paraphrase, you have them, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. So 3 and under is free. 4 years old to 12 years old is $2, and 13 up is $3.
Yep. It's accurate.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yeah.
Those kids are going to the swimming pool regardless, and plus they can get a season pass. So, I mean, there are ways that we've addressed this in the past, and those kids have equal access to the swimming pool, and they've made it work. And I think that this is just a better way of doing the management for the pool, and we get the benefit of the WISE organization, and more importantly, their big fat insurance policy.
Well, if I could also address that too, the rate of $5 was in consultation with staff again. We've had that conversation in other cities as we operate pools in those areas as well. And it was a consideration that city staff were already considering at this time as well, just to try to update policy rates and make sure that it was a little bit of a conversation around making sure that the money that was paid for entrance to the pool was helping with some of the behavior issues that I was explained happened previously. So that was the way it was explained to me. As the contract states, it's up to $5. We're more than happy. At the Y, our policy is that we don't turn anybody away for their inability to pay, and we have a financial assistance program that speaks to that. And so I would believe that would extend well beyond to this same situation, where it would not be our opportunity to try to raise the rates to hinder somebody's access to the pool, but instead trying to set up policies that hopefully exceeds that expectation, that when they get to the pool, it's a quality program for them and it's a safe environment for them at the same time.
Matt,
Yes, sir.
I would just like to say as well, I very much am hearing Mr. Councilman Herron's concern. I unfortunately don't have membership to the Y yet. Hopefully I can address that. And I don't have a pool. I have 2 children who frequently have used this pool and often saw families with maybe 4 brothers and sisters, 4 or 5 at a time. So if they go a couple times a week, this can be a substantial financial impact. To buy a season pass for $40 for 4 kids is a substantial expense. And very much agree that the why doing this would be fantastic and for that, but would like to see the feasibility of what it would be to keep the rates the same, how that would affect the amount that we're in the red, if we're already in the red, if we could do that, have a better management of that, better safety, more programs. I feel for the quality of life and the equitability of our city there that it would be worth exploring that.
It's only for 1 year right now, this resolution, correct?
You guys, that is correct.
So if it doesn't work, you do something different the next summer.
Would you touch on the season pass? Because I don't see a season pass anywhere in this.
Yeah, that was not involved in this contract. Part
So
of
there
that
is no
conversation.
season pass available.
That was not a conversation. That's, once again, I'm fully admitting that in the conversation, it's not that we excluded that option, but what our proposal included was a youth membership to the YMCA is $10 a month. And so it actually would come out less for those youth to come in and purchase that Y membership and take advantage of access to the pool that way. A teen membership to the Y is $20 a month. And so there's still potential in that scenario for a teenager to be able to come out and participate as well. So that was in lieu of the season pass.
So,
in this
Mr. Mayor, if I
proposal.
may?
Yeah.
We're lowering the price because a kid can get a season pass to the pool for $10. Is that right?
$10 a month. So,
$10 a month.
Typically, you're talking 2 months considered, so that's a $20 rate. That would give them access to the pool, but also access to the YMCA and reduce rates on different Y programs such as developmental sports and our child care programs as well.
It sounds like it's just an education thing. The Y has great services for the community, and that's just something that needs to be provided by the city to the residents related to the programs that were available at a reduced cost from what it was previously set when it was operated by the city. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. That's true.
What is Guthrie paying?
My understanding was the contract last year included a payment of $5,000 to the YMCA
I'm
to
talking
offset
about
costs.
the per day cost.
My understanding was last year they also paid $5 a day for all swimmers in the pool area.
Does the Y also charge, is it an upcharge to take swimming lessons or water aerobics and things like that? You charge for that extra?
So there is a cost to our swim lesson program. If you're a member, it's $15. It goes up to, if you're a non-member, to right about $50 for a session. So that's 8 times at the pool with an instructor. The price model is built around trying to encourage as many participants as we can. And we do also, like I shared earlier, offer financial assistance. So if anybody is not able to pay that rate, we do offer an opportunity for them to pay a different rate.
My point is that's another revenue generator that you have on
And it
top
will
of
be
admission.
included, if swim lessons are a part of that, that was part of the conversation to where all revenue generated off the pool in that area would be included back on consideration for this. So swim lesson fees would be included in what we turn back into the city at the end of the summer.
What was Bethany's pass last summer, and was it the entire family? Bethany's family swimming pass? Do we know what that cost was? Is that the $40 you referred to?
It says individual season pass is $40.
Individual.
Family is $85.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion that we pass item number 9.
I already made the motion.
Well, then I'd like to second it.
Please cast your votes. And we definitely would like some kind of report at the end of the summer so we could compare last year to this summer. Item 10 is consideration and possible approval, First Amendment to the Bethany Metropolitan Library System lease agreement regarding the placement and care of artwork to be provided by the City of Bethany. Do we have a report or any information on this? Okay. Are there any questions, or do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept this lease, or easement agreement with the Metropolitan Library System.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 11 is discussion regarding provisions for furnishing property insurance for the new Bethany Library. Do we have any information on this?
I can say that I talked to David Davis about when we were negotiating with the library prior to the building, that, and what we had done with our previous lease was that we maintained the building, what we owned. But as far as furnishings, that is the Metropolitan Library System. And that's what I think we should keep in mind as we move forward.
I know that was the discussion I had with Chief Cole, and David Davis was similar to that, but I know that you had a conversation with Todd Oberdeen since. Yeah, push just so long. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, yeah, I've had this discussion with Todd Oberding and also David Davis, and I'll preface this by saying that the typical arrangement is the Metropolitan Library typically insures the building. They cover that cost themselves, and they do it cheaper than we do. I think our policy is going to cost about $16,000 a year with a $10,000 deductible. They're paying typically about 10 or 12, which really doesn't matter if we don't carry it, but they insure about 18 or 19 libraries, and this is just kind of the standard thing they do. And I know David has a concern that if the policy lapsed, that it would leave Bethany in the lurch on that. But I'm sure the lease agreement should be structured in a way that if the policy, that the policy would not lapse, or we would get a notification from their insurer or something like that to ensure that. So it's really just a matter of how strongly you feel about carrying that policy to ensure that doesn't happen to the tune of $16,000 a year, or whether you would rather let the Metropolitan Library absorb that cost and do it the way they do all the other libraries.
When we were discussing this back then, the problem that had been happening in that situation and others was that where we were named and we had requested that a certificate of insurance be provided for us, that because of between personnel changes on both sides, or even the insurer being changed on the library side, that those, when we went back to look for them, hadn't been provided. And so this is one of those double-edged swords. I agree. But it's the difference in the price warranted for the protection. That would be my only question.
Well, and this is a little bit of a legal issue, and I'm sure David has thought through this, but I mean, one thing that I would remind you all, it's my understanding that the library was constructed with general obligation bonds, correct? That adds a whole layer of complexity. So if in fact it's addressed through an amendment to the lease agreement to where they carry it, I mean, that's something that staff's going to have to be very vigilant about, because the fact that it's secured by general obligation bonds, and my guess is it probably has a 25-year, was it a 25-year note?
I think it is.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, just because until it's legally defeased, I mean, it does create a legal level of complexity. So that's my only tale of woe and caution.
So how does legal recommend we proceed with this particular item?
Well, I'll work with, the interim city manager has obviously had a lot of discussions with Mr. Davis about it. And when he and I were kind of divvying up duties, that was one thing that he stayed involved in. And so I will defer to his recommendation on it. I just thought it was important for me to mention that to the council. But I'm sure Mr. Davis is way ahead of it. I just wanted to throw that out there.
David Davis recommends that the city carry the insurance.
Yes.
This is just a discussion item.
Yeah, I don't think that you have to take any action.
Okay. Item 12 is consideration and possible award bid for fire department backup generator and automatic transfer switch to 10-year extended warranty to Faith Electric, Inc. for an amount of $27,845 per staff recommendation. Do I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Please cast your votes.
Did an entire evening here, didn't he?
Item 13 is consideration and possible award of bid for 2 computer servers to ImageNet Consulting for $34,807 per staff recommendation. Do I have a motion for approval or any questions?
Staff recommends it. I make a motion, we approve.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 14 is consideration and possible award of bid for water treatment plant lime sludge extraction, hauling, and disposal to Jacobs Farms for $149,500 per staff recommendation. Do I have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
I've got a
Second.
question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. What's your question?
We opened these bids, these 13 and 14, at our last city council meeting. And on these 2 items, there was only but one bidder. And I'm wondering, that $149,500, that's an awful lot of money. And is it critical that it gets done right now, or can we re-advertise for that?
Even though I'm the lawyer, I may actually be able to address that.
Thank you.
When I spoke with, and especially the lime sludge, when I spoke with the folks out at the water treatment plant, they indicated to me that they were expecting to pay about $150,000 for it. Secondarily, there are only a few, it's my understanding, and again, this is me sort of morphing information from them, but my understanding is there are only very few companies that actually do this. And so they really weren't terribly surprised by the fact that they only got one bid. And on the ImageNet, if memory serves, we put in, I think that as part of the bid, we actually put in a trade-in for existing equipment, and so that might have been a deterrent, for people to bid, but I think it actually worked in the city's favor, but assuming that's what actually transpired. So I hope that's helpful.
Do I have a motion for approval?
I thought we did.
Oh, do we have a second? Yep. Please cast your votes.
I made the second.
Item 15 is consideration and possible adoption of resolution number 1541, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Bethany, Oklahoma, approving the mayor's appointment of John Schugert to fill the unexpired term of Ken Smart to the Bethany Economic Development Authority for a term expiring June 6, 2019, and approving the mayor's reappointment of Philip Suarez to the Bethany Economic Development Authority for a term expiring on June 6, 2023. Do I have any questions
I have a
or
question.
motion? Yes, ma'am.
Could you reverse the term?
Did I reverse the
I
term?
think, could you? And put John on for 25 and Philip for,
No.
okay.
Yeah.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Please cast your votes. On to item 20, citizens' opportunity to address the council on general topics related to city business or services. There's a 3-minute limit. No action may be taken on matters under this item. Do we have anybody wishing to address the council? Item 21 is city attorney's report.
I know you're ready to go home, but I just got to say this. Last weekend, I attended the International Municipal Lawyers Association, and there were 400 municipal lawyers at this particular conference, and I'm so excited, especially because I just had a Diet Coke about it. And there was a lot of great information that I'm going to be disseminating to you. And, you know, it's kind of exciting to see so many lawyers that provide services to municipalities throughout the United States. And so I stole a bunch of ideas, and I can't wait to give them to you. So anyway, thank you.
Item 22 is the city manager's report.
I have nothing new to report on this. I would like to say I've been welcomed and accommodated by the staff, and I appreciate their attitude towards me in the days I've been here. And I'd also like to say I think it's a great move to partner with the Y on the swimming pool thing, and I'd like to see us partner with some other things to further the community, especially with this great complex we have over here. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Item 23 is the mayor and council members' announcements, comments, and proposals. I would like to start this evening myself by saying that our prayers and thoughts go out to the Shirey family. We lost a Bethany family member who sat on this horseshoe for 28 years in Councilman Phil Shirey, and he served his city well. His funeral was Friday, this past Friday. He served his city, the city of Bethany, and his country, and most importantly, his family, very well, and he will be missed. I'd also like to say that I have a family member. I promised my wife I wouldn't shed a tear when I mentioned this, and I'm not going to do it. We sent one of our sons off today to basics so that he could also serve his country. And so I'm very proud of that and excited about what life holds for that young man. There's a lot of tears shed today as we watched him get board a plane and head off to endure what so many have endured before him, like Mr. Todd. Also, I'd like to say that I asked Chief Cole to send email to council, and I received everyone, I believe, except for maybe Mr. Hunter's and Mr. Goodwin's, and if you have sent that in, then I will just have to locate them, or please send them again in the form of an email in regards to the LEAF task force. Staff will be reaching out to them this week to let them know that we have their name and number and we know where they live, and they have been requested to serve on this LEAF task force so that they can work with city staff and come up with a reasonable situation or solution to our trash, sanitation, leaf collection situation that about tore our city apart, it seems like, a few months ago. So hopefully they will be presenting to council soon. And so just to let your people know, we will be reaching out to them to let them know when they will be meeting with city staff. And that is all I have. Amanda?
Thank you. I just wanted to have a little request for my city councilors to please, speak loud, project, and wait until your mic is on, just for consideration for those that are hard of hearing and or deaf. And then, just to translate and interpret it in Spanish, eso estaba recomendando a todos mis compañeros de concejal y el público que por favor esperen hasta que sus micrófonos se prendan y que puedan proyectar sus voces en consideración a los que no puedan escuchar bien o son sordos. Thank you.
Thank you. And that reminds me, can you work with staff to help them with our utility billing in regards to seeing that out there? Okay, thank you. Mr. Goodwin?
Nothing for me, thanks.
Mr. Todd? Mr. Palmer?
I'll make this short and sweet. The staff and council, we need to set up some workshops related to a couple pending items. One would be the budget, which is looming around the corner. We need to get on that, and I would recommend that we set up a time and get everybody's schedule and calendars out. We can do a workshop so we can get that set up. We also need to come up with a active plan related to the city manager search. We need to set up some kind of a workshop to create the process that we're all going to agree to and how we get there. Maybe, go back from the 6 months related to Mr. Smart's employment and then set some deadlines so that we can abide by those and then really make some progress related to the city manager search. We also need a workshop related to the city attorney search. We, with all due respect to Beth Ann, she's doing a great job, but ultimately we need to find a new attorney. We've got some prospects, but we need to have a workshop to allow that to happen. And I want to thank the mayor related to the TIF workshop. We've got that set up. That's open to the public. And now that we have the TIF areas approved, and as the chairman of the TIF review committee, we can now really focus on the information provided to the businesses in the community as we go about doing this. I think they're going to be excited. I think you're going to really understand the process and what we can do to improve our community, and we can educate the businesses and the public about the benefits that we will see related to the 39th Street project and the 23rd Street project. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And before I move on, I said one of our sons, and his name is Gavin Stewart. So remember him and everyone else serving our country in your prayers. Mr. Knapp.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I was going to reiterate that, just prayers for your son. And I know that Paige from the chamber mentioned this, but I think she said the wrong time. And you didn't mention Bethany Breakfast is this Thursday, 7:30 in the morning at Old Orchard on 23rd. And I know that those have bounced between 23rd and 39th at different organizations. So just come in here and learn. I think there's going to be some exciting news that is announced at most every meeting. But this Thursday, 7:30, Old Orchard. Thank you.
Mr. Herron?
Thank you. I have nothing.
Mr. Hunter?
I have nothing this evening.
Mrs. Larson?
I'm going to be quick. I do want to offer my condolences to the Shirey family. I miss Phil. I miss sitting next to him, and I miss turning his mic on. Ken, welcome. You're doing a good job already. You're putting up with us. And Amanda, thank you for your comment about the mics. It's vital. All of us sometimes have maybe not a hearing problem, but a listening problem, that it helps us keep it on board. I do want to say that for many years have been spent attempting to get our city sustainability in motion. Our previous leadership has laid the groundwork, and our job now is to expand on that groundwork and lay the foundations for many to come to live, to work, to play, and to educate themselves for the future generations. And what we've done tonight is one of those first steps to get there, and I'm appreciative to staff and those that we have hired to make it happen. That's all I have.
Thank you. Item 24 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until April 16th, 2019. I call to order the Bethany Public Works Authority. Item 1 is consent docket A and B. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
second? Please cast your votes. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until April 16th, 2019. I call to order the Bethany Hospital Trust. Item 1 is consent docket A and B. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Please cast your votes. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until April 16th, 2019. I call to order the Bethany Development Authority. Item 1 is consent docket A and B. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until April 16th, 2019. And with that, we are adjourned.